Can't forget the fact about the new name. I'm a pharmacist, baby. Get this vitamin. Ain't except for the chains and your diamond ride. Knocking at your front door, let me come inside. Knocking at your front door, let me slide inside. Can you let a brother know if you're down the ride? Knocking at your front door, if you down the ride. Knocking at your front door, let me slide inside. Knocking at your front door, if you down the ride. Can you let a brother know if you down the ride? Knocking at your front door, let me slide inside. Knocking at your front door, if you down the ride. I'm here waiting around. I can always see a face in the crowd. You know I want to say it loud. Even though we can't look back, most couldn't catch a break if we do them all kick ass. It's uncommon. I'm standing on your line with a big.
Is your Sunday as lazy as mine?
I usually try to work on my house projects.
You usually try and work on what?
House project.
This is a relatively new thing, I think, right?
House?
Yeah.
I feel very domesticated now. Very interesting.
So do you ever go in the city? How often do you go to the city?
I work in the city.
Oh, you work there?
Yeah.
How far is the commute?
It's like an hour and a half. Yeah. But an hour and a half there's a ferry ride, so I take a ferry for an hour.
Oh, so that gives you time to work.
Yeah, so on the ferry I just like read or just like try to get some fun.
I'm trying to understand how it's maybe I should Google map it, but you work downtown Seattle and then you live an hour and a half in the boonies, which requires you to actually take a ferry.
Yeah.
Holy. Is there a lot of people that commute that way?
I think there are. Well, the thing is, I have the option of like working from home. So I usually actually just go to work like 3 days a week, or go to the office 3 days a week, and work on Monday, Fridays from home. But it's really interesting seeing like all the older people around here because we're like the youngest people on the block. And you're going to like you go to like the boat club, the Rotary Club, all these like different clubs with a bunch of old people.
Yeah, but they're more curious about you than you are about them.
No. But the thing is, I see their lives, and I'm wondering if this is what the end result is of people's lives.
Oh. Or you can say that you've obtained something that they've took their entire lives getting, and now you're just like a little faster than getting it what they got.
Yeah, but then like if that's the case, then what's the next?
That's where you trailblaze the next step, Richard.
You got a house, I got a boat. Like, what else could you want? Next, a helicopter.
GTA level.
As I was walking in snowy December, thinking about my shorty and all the bumping and grinding we gonna do. My mama kept calling.
Yeah, but this is just Seattle, though. Like, I haven't been out to Seattle. I'm sure it's really pretty and nice.
Oh yeah, Seattle's really nice. No.
It sounds like Victoria.
No, Seattle is. It depends where you go in Seattle. Seattle's a lot like Vancouver, but it's just the American version.
Oh.
It's like a lot of Americanisms are at play.
Right.
Like the culture, I would say, is like very different. But like environment-wise and like attitude, it's very similar. And people in Seattle just have way more money than people in Vancouver, unless you're, yeah.
Interesting. You can tell me all about it. We're gonna go live here. So I'm gonna take this overlay off, and I'm gonna turn off the music. I've been trying to promote Canadian music on the stream.
So we're playing.
This guy's name is Lou Phelps. He's from Canada. He was nominated for the Junos for rap. Really good. But someone else won. Tory Lanez won, which is he's all right, but not as good as Lou Phelps in my opinion. Anyway, thanks for doing this show, man.
All right.
Yeah. Like I said, I find it very aesthetic the way that I'm looking at you on the stream right now. What was that? How's it like to be a new homeowner, man?
It's a lot of work.
Hmm.
Yeah. So like, well, one, it's very expensive. It's way more expensive than you think it would be, I would say.
Yeah.
I guess, like you have the cost of the home, plus like all the improvements, and just always feels like I'm always buying things now when before I never bought anything.
You thought about all of this before you did the purchase, though, so it was worth it before you decided.
Yeah, if you think about it, I mean, I bought the house in the 2 weeks from deciding to buy the house to buying the house. This is not a very long thought process of.
Okay. Okay, let me just jump right into it then. Does your thought process in your real life reflect the way of your professional life when you are a developer?
In my thought process. I think it's different though, right? It depends how far ahead you're thinking.
Okay. Let's
Yeah.
I'm gonna frame this conversation with introducing who you are, and maybe you can tell me a little bit about you. We're acquaintances. I met you in San Francisco last year through a mutual friend of ours, and you are, from what I can tell, one of the hardest working guys. And from everyone else that I know you through, say that you're a very hardworking guy. Your name is Richard Chan. You're from
Yeah.
Canada, and you are currently based in Seattle. And you are a developer,
Yeah, that's correct.
and you co-founded a company called Poppy, which is a really cool networking app or company that allows caregivers to connect with people who need to have their kids taken care of.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Sweet. Where are you from in Canada?
So I was born in Calgary, Alberta.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were in Calgary for how long?
23 years. So like all the way up to when I graduated from university.
Huh. And which university did you go to?
University of Calgary.
What was the program that you went into?
I did engineering and entrepreneurship.
I was just in Calgary this weekend, and I'm sure things have changed, but I'm surprised that if you were going to go into a program like that you wouldn't want to go into somewhere like Waterloo or something. Did you ever consider that?
I didn't really have the option to, so I actually wanted to go to UBC, but it was due to like family situation. My dad just said go to University of Calgary.
Oh, so it was
Yeah.
under the auspices of your father.
Yeah. And back at the time, I was like, yeah, university is just university. So I just like, my dad probably knows better.
Huh. See, I've only been out to the west since the last 2 years, and I'm kind of gotten to know Alberta a little bit more. Have you traveled out to the east? Have you been out to Ontario?
I used to live in Waterloo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Not for very long, but for like 6 months.
This was in your adult years or in your childhood?
Yeah. In my adult years.
Huh.
So one of the companies I joined was actually based in Waterloo.
Oh.
And so I joined them, lived in Waterloo for 6 months, and then moved to San Francisco.
Tell me a little bit about your time growing up in Calgary and getting involved in software, because I actually grew up with a bunch of people who did that and now do that for a living and stuff, and it was a kind of like Waterloo was the mecca for all the kids after getting out of high school to get into Waterloo and then try to chase sort of their dream, and then San Francisco was sort of like a bubble that was growing, and it was all connected that way. How was it growing up in the West? And also, you weren't in Vancouver, so in Calgary, for example, was sort of the prairie lands, and it's a very different like. Not maybe recently they've changed, landscapes changed, but how was it choosing your career growing up as a Calgarian?
So I've always had an affinity for computers. Actually, so it stems from StarCraft, I would say. So way back when I first started into like video games, right? StarCraft was like the game, and I didn't have a good enough computer to like play it, right? So my brother he was starting in computers, and so he gave me his old like hand-me-down, which is like a 386, but just couldn't play StarCraft at all, right? So I used to work in a video game store, so I used to like play there.
A
But
video
then
game store?
Yeah, at the video game store.
Oh,
This is like when I was like 13.
wait, how did those work?
What do you mean?
Like, what were those video game stores? I don't like, they just had a PC set up so you can just go in and play?
Set up, right? And so they had internet there, so when there were no customers, I would just play games.
Oh, see, in Ontario we had these things called net cafes.
Yeah. No, this is like a Blockbuster rental store.
Okay.
It wasn't Blockbuster, it was like a family-owned kind of one that I used to like hang out at. and I just started working there.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, so that's so you kind of got into it with StarCraft. Did you start playing StarCraft solo or did you play with friends?
Solo, well, with people who worked at the store.
Campaign or multiplayer?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So I used to play campaign when there were customers, but when I got late at night, I used to go online and play on my dial-up modem.
Oh, right, the dial-up modem, the free internet. I miss when stores used to have an Xbox setup that you can play the latest release. So actually, this has never been a thing for me. I never noticed that when I was growing up. I didn't know that there were stores that offered that service.
No. I was working at the store.
Oh,
Right. So it was a rental store, so I rented movies and video games.
cool,
But they had a computer there that I could use, and I just started surfing the internet and playing games.
cool, cool. So you got paid and you got to play. So all right, so StarCraft kind of.
Right. And then that's how I got started in games and like really computers, and like I started like upgrading my own computer at home. So I used my money I made from the store to like buy used computer parts to eventually play at home. And then when I got to like high school, I started programming, which was I noticed one of my friends like staying late in the computer lab, and he was like making games. I was like, oh, that's what I want to do as a career.
Oh.
Right. So then I started staying every single day after school with one of my teachers for an hour, and just like programming. So
This-
she taught me like quick basic, then it turned into like Pascal, then it turned to like C.
This teacher of yours was well endowed, knew a lot about coding, or was sort of like dabbled in it and just said, "Look, guys, there's this cool thing that people are doing. Try it."
No, she was just like a basic kind of teacher. Like she knew a little bit, but like she knew how to like teach how to code. But I would say it wasn't very like she wasn't like a hardcore programmer, I would say.
Huh.
She was teaching it for as part of her job, not as because she was interested in it. But she was very like influential to me, I would say, because she just spent a lot of time with me, just like telling me how things worked.
Wow. Do you ever keep in touch with your old like I'm a teacher myself, but do you ever keep in touch with your teachers from before?
No, I don't.
But like how crazy that some of these teachers, so-called teachers, make such impacts on our lives and changes us. However trivial and however small, it kind of like moves us that way. We spend so much time with them. But all right, so then you work in this computer lab with your friend, you're coding and you're building. Did you build anything successful?
No, we're just building like games, like choose your own adventure games. I build like card games, just like very, very basic rudimentary things.
Right. And
This
then
is back when I was like 13, so
what's that?
this is back when I was like 13, so
Oh,
not building anything like advanced. And we were using QBasic,
mm-hmm.
so
I'm trying to follow this timeline. So then you start building these games and you're fascinated with coding. I don't know if is coding fascinating to you then?
it is. It's like the one thing I can do without even like thinking too much about it. Like it's not stressful. It's like I'm surprised that I get paid to code because it's like it's fun.
Compare it with something like a discipline like mathematics.
Yeah.
And the logic behind that. Like, I mean, there were so many people studied really hard and then decided to go into accounting or financing. I guess for you, coding is more fun because you can apply it and build things with it. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's like a big problem, right? So it's like, what problem am I trying to solve? And there's a way to solve it using code, right? And that can be either hardware problems or software problems. Like, at the end of the day, everything relies on some sort of code or logic.
It's funny because Richard, you talk about this like it's like normal or easy, but most people wouldn't understand. I mean, the majority of the public have no idea what it is, and so even at the time when you were younger, when this wasn't a big thing, I can only imagine. How could you have conversations like this with everyone, or it was probably with only a few people then.
Well, back then it was all about how do I make video games,
So you
right?
talk-
So it was more about like, what do I need to do to make a video game?
Right. Cool. So then, how did you move into school then? Like when your dad noticed that, look, my kid likes computers. There's a future in this. Was he like thinking of sending you out west, or was he like stick at U of C, for whatever program it was? Did you guys think a lot about that, or put into a lot of planning into that, or no?
So my dad never expected me to go to university.
Huh.
It was only one day he was just like, "Oh, you're smart enough to go to university, right?" And so the reason why is that no one on my dad's side of the family has ever gone to university, so I'm actually the first.
Okay.
So education for my dad was just never a thing. Like it was just never like, it's kind of funny because he's like an Asian dad, but it's just like he just never expected me to be like academic in any sense.
Wow.
So one day when he's like, "Oh, you're smart to go to university. What do you want to do?" When he realized my grades were really good, and the most natural thing was computers because I would just sit on my computer all day and all night. I actually wanted to go into hardware because I actually love building computers and just like trying to like for me it was all about figuring out how it works, right? And so I think about VCRs, think about cassette cycle recorders, look at the components, and try to like actually figure out what is making this thing like go.
Huh.
And then as part of like building computers, I'd always buy new parts, upgrade parts, just always just constantly cycling things, all for games pretty much. And so when I decided what I wanted to do, I want to build hardware because that's what I enjoyed. I just enjoyed sitting in front of my computer, taking it apart, putting it back together. And then that's what I went to. So I went to computer engineering with that focus.
Do you think you needed a good background in math and science for this?
Well, yeah, of course you need a good background in math and science.
You say that as someone that is not good at math.
I would say that the biggest thing is you have to be willing to be curious about why something works. Right? If you're willing to try to figure out why something works, then it comes naturally. Because then if you think about like fundamentals and first principles, it all comes from like the base, right? So like for computers, it's like logic and electricity. If you know how that works, then you can build up bigger abstractions, right? It's if you try to like figure something out from the top down of like what is code, right? Then you're like, okay, so code translates to like machine language, which translates to like instruction sets, which translates to transistors, which translates to how electrons flow through and make logic, right? If you don't understand like the lower levels, it's very hard to understand the higher levels things. It's like trying to understand like advanced chemistry without understanding what a proton and electron are.
The way that you're saying this could be a very individualistic pursuit of knowledge. You don't really need, because if you were going to study something and break it down from its, do you think university was important for your development?
I would say yes and no. Like I don't feel like I really utilize university because I just tried to like game the system as much as possible.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was just how many classes could I do to get what I need to do with doing the least amount of work.
What was university more important for, do you think?
That's just experience, like friends and just going through the experience and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of my times for like studying, it was just like self-learning and just trying to like game the exams.
Yeah. And you finished university in one go.
Yeah. No.
And I was reading up about you, and you kind of mentioned it on your own, but you did some traveling. This was right after school, or because you did a trip out to Asia for 2 years, I think.
Oh no, that was like after I got my first job, or my first like real job.
Okay, so you went through university and you got your first job through university?
No, I went to university, and then after university, I was like tried to start a video game company because that's what I've always wanted to do. And so I did that for a year with two of my friends. And then this is back when the iPhone came out. And so we made video games in my friend's basement, which was really hard. It didn't really work out. And so then I had to get like a real job. And so I ended up working at a company called Hootsuite, which is in Vancouver. And at Hootsuite, I worked there for about a year and a half. And then one of my friends was like, hey, let's go do a startup. And I was like, sure. Right. And he's like, let's go to Asia.
Oh.
And so I quit my job at Hootsuite and then went to Asia, and like we tried to do a startup there. That didn't really work out. So after like 3 months, it like we kind of like fizzled out.
Right.
And so I ended up just traveling around Asia for a year.
Oh, well, fast forward, man.
I ended up back in San Francisco. I ended up joining the other company in Waterloo. And then I was working at that company in San Francisco for another year. And then that wasn't really working out. So I was like, and then one of my friends was like, hey, I know this guy that you met in Asia. Let's go do a startup. Or So I'm like, okay, let's do it. So I went back to Asia for a year. Just like traveled around and this.
It just seems like you're just bouncing back and forth around the globe, and you're talking about it as it was just like, yeah, I was here and I just was here. Most people find traveling a sort of like a planned endeavor. It's almost like we're about to put away some money for this one trip out this way, and we're gonna do this in a very like linear way For you, I don't think that was the case.
No, there's only.
What was sort of the momentum that drove you from one place to another? I guess it was these opportunities.
Yeah, just like, is this the best thing for me right now? And like, yes, no, and
Right.
yeah, like, did I want to do this? And like, yes, I wanted to do this. So
It's incredible because it seems like your career path has allowed you to do the traveling, as a bonus, as a perk.
I would say so. Well, I would say that just like depending on how you, like the way I define it is like, what is your career, right? So I guess there's two parts. So I think a lot of people like focus on like the money part of career, whereas for me, I've never really thought about that. Like I always think of money as like a byproduct of what you do, not like the goal.
Yeah.
Right. And so like I think for a lot of people when they think about money, it's like security and stuff like that. So I've never felt that need. Right. And even when I had the money, I was like, just money's useless.
That's a fascinating way of living your life and not letting money control you or do what you, or make decisions for you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about how your travels influence the way you are today. Do you have any interesting experiences in Asia while you were doing this? Because for me, Asia is sort of like the Asian man's Europe, right? Like it's like most people go to Europe to find themselves, and they're usually white, And for me, it's like this idea: you go back to Asia, you find your roots. Do you find that? Did you have any experiences that were very memorable to you?
Well, yeah, lots of experiences, like lots of interesting travels.
Mm-hmm.
I think like the biggest thing is just it gives you a lot of perspective on like life. Because like when you're living in America, you like don't realize just how good you have it. Right. I mean, when you go to Asia and like living in places like Southeast Asia, it's people have like very little there, like very, very little. Right. But the thing is, they're a lot happier than most people in America.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's a very like insightful thing because it's like, why are they so happy? It's because they don't have the same sort of like worries that we have.
Yeah.
Right. They have all their kind of like base needs met, and they have a very strong social community, family, which is a big thing there, right? And so it's like they can be happy with very little, right? So the question is like, why can't people in America be happy with a little?
Interesting, yeah. Do you ever travel back and forth?
But no.
You just kind of like went through that stage, and now you're based in America. Okay, cool. What's it like being an expat?
In Asia?
No, here in the States.
It's funny. I always consider myself an expat.
Yeah. Like, do you ever travel back to Calgary and hang out and stuff?
No, just for Christmas time to visit family.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I find like in Calgary's become a very kind of like depressed place after all the oil and gas stuff like crashed.
I don't know. I've been reading the news. I feel like they're trying to bring in like tech. It seems like that's the next step for Calgary, is that they're very welcoming to tech companies and trying to fill in some of the commercial spaces. Something about Calgary I was reading about, like how there's like a lot of commercial space that's empty right now, and they're trying to use art and tech to kind of fill up those spaces. I think art in general. But anyway, okay, all right. So I have some things that I wrote up before you came on. As a developer of a successful business, how does it feel to be behind the scenes?
As a developer, I don't know if we're successful yet. We're still working on the successful part, but.
Okay. Well, I mean, okay, fine. Sorry, just this idea of being a developer, right? Like we are. There's the front end and the back end. Usually you are in control of the back end, and everything that you do eventually gets pushed, and then it becomes the product. So working in the back end, how does it feel as someone who is always behind the scenes and doing things, doing the mechanics of the product?
I would say it's like you feel like you're responsible for a lot of things, right? So for example, for us, we deploy babysitters to families' homes, right? And so like if something goes wrong in any sort of sense from like a technical point of view, sometimes the person might end up in the wrong place, or like there might be a mishap and like people's expectations like that, right? So it's very kind of like how do I ensure that our service is reliable? The thing with that, it's like there's a lot of things that go on, right? So it's like It's like getting people to where they need to go, getting the information they need to go, making sure that, the people running the operations of our company have the information they need, right? So there's a lot of like behind the scene things. I would say like, as a developer, it's kind of cool that you can like build these things. And like, like it's funny because like I can hit a button and an actual physical person will like go to someone else's house, which is like very interesting from a tech point of view because like, it's like we're trying to build this economy in the back end, right? It's a marketplace. But at the end of the day, we are a marketplace that has babysitters and families. Right.
Being the person who draws up the blueprints of a massive project such as this one, do you consider yourself, can you compare yourself to it as an architect?
I would say, yeah, like there's a certain design architecture that you need to do in the back end that like, or as a code developer that, makes things go smooth. Like things you have to think about too is like, what systems are you using? How are things integrated together? How extensible is your system? How maintainable is your system?
Yeah.
Right. And so like, the thing about software is that it's constantly changing. Right. It's like compared to like architecture of like buildings and so on, like when you design a building, you kind of like design a building once, you get the building built, and then it just kind of stays. Right. But for software, you're always trying to change things. You can always change different parts of it. So it's like if you think of like an engine, imagine you're trying to like have an engine run and you like pull up part of the engine while it's running and like put a new part in.
Yeah.
So like those are things you think about when like designing software. And then, the other big thing is scale. So like, once we get, more users, more like, like once you go to different cities, how do you build something that's extensible so that different cities with different demographics and different, use cases can, partake in like the software.
With interruptions in the flow, that would be your job, obviously, to fix. Do you find yourself now as a developer, someone who is creating more or solving problems more?
I think it's like half-half.
Okay.
Right. So a lot of times it's just like, using experience to like, have I seen this before? Yes, no. Do I have a solution for it? Yes, no. If I do, then good. If I don't, then I have to go find a solution.
Right.
Which is like researching by myself, talking to other people, like getting more information so I can make a better decision.
Yeah. This process is, like you just said, is it a very independent one, or do you think that it's like more of a group project?
It really depends, right? Because like, we have, there's other people working on software, right? So it's like we have to come to a consensus as a group to say like, is this the best decision for the company? Right? In some cases, it's yes. Sometimes, if I just went off on my own and did something, it might not be the best decision because I just, the more information you have, the better decision you can make. And the only information I have is from my own experiences and what I read or what I know I should go learn.
Yeah. So it's funny because I'm now thinking like, let's not even talk about the communication between you and the front end, but between you and the people that work in the back end. It's very interesting because you're communicating in a completely different language that most civilians don't know unless they learn the program. And then what happens is it gets even more interesting because it becomes specific to the product that you're making. So when you speak with your members of the team, do you find it sometimes that you develop new language and things that you say that are very, very personalized?
Well, that's like the culture of the company, right? It's like as you bring people into a company, you develop a way of communicating with them. Right? And so like no matter what, you're always going to have like specific language, just like that's internal to your company or your group.
Right.
Like, the same thing happens with your friends, right? If you hang out with different friends, you have different ways of saying things.
Yeah.
It's like that's the culture you've developed among like your groups and social circles.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And then what if you have some sort of technical jargon or some technical problem that's very hard to elaborate on, and then you have the front end who's trying to make sense of that? Do you find that there's time wasted, or is there any way that you can kind of like expedite that process?
So when you refer to like front end, what are you referring to?
What do you mean?
Because like you're saying, like it sounds like you're saying back end and front end are two different things.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I mean like so let's say people who are not the designers, not the technical designers, the people who are just asking for a product, like there's product managers who go, this is something that we want from the team. build it, right? And then that's the back end that builds it. Is correct? Or
The way I see back and front end are two technical things. So back end is like the server stuff. Front end is like the actual like website.
oh, right. So let's say if you have a user like me, I'm the one who wants to go and babysit and do some work, and I go, okay, I want to do this, but it's not working. Can you guys explain it to me? And if it's a problem, is it hard for you to talk to me about it, to tell me about it?
Well, no. So you sit down, like, at the end of the day, it's like they're experiencing some sort of problem or they want some sort of feature.
Hmm.
And so you have to think about what is, like, you take all the technical talk out of it because you're just trying to, like, at the end of the day, you're trying to achieve some sort of like task or goal,
Okay.
right? If you take away a technical goal, it's like, what are they trying to achieve, right? Maybe it might be like, oh, I want to update my requests, right? And so there's no technical aspect to that. It's just like, okay, so why can't you update your request?
Mm.
Because I don't know where the button is or something like that. Or like, it's the interface is too confusing. Or, I did something and I did something and I got an error message that makes no sense, right? So these are all like, there's no technical talk in this. It's like, what are you trying to do, right? And then you as a non-technical person should be able to use it without having to know, the technical details of it.
Do you ever feel like you want to tell someone about how much work goes behind, a process? Like, do you ever feel inclined? Let's say if I was asking you for something, and then you go, well, the level of complexity that is required for something like this. Do you ever feel the need to talk about that?
Well, it depends who I'm talking to.
Hmm.
Right? If it's a customer, it's like they don't care about the double detail. All they want is the service that they requested.
Right.
Right. And so, like, and part of the times they won't even know how much work goes in behind the scenes.
Sure.
Right. But if somebody's actually interested, then yeah, I'll tell them, these are all the things that we do, like, that you just don't hear or see of.
Mm-hmm.
But part of things, like, we're trying to remove complexity from the whole process of booking a babysitter.
Yeah.
Right, which is from what I've seen is a very complex thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because it reminds me of like being a teacher and stuff too, because you need credentials, you need proper, vetting. There's vetting systems, and I can't imagine that it is probably a lot of work that is surrounding that. There's a lot of work. What is it like to be a tech company in Seattle right now, where Seattle's sort of like a hub for companies that are new or of high interest? Like, what is it like?
Well, I'd say it's predominantly dominated by Amazon, Microsoft.
Oh,
So, like, that's the big thing, right? So, like, everywhere you go, you feel you're in the wake of those two companies. Right? And so a lot of people, you work for Amazon, you work for Microsoft, right? And now a lot of other San Francisco companies are coming up here, like Airbnb, Stripe, Uber. They all have offices up here, right? And so it's becoming this like secondary San Francisco. You can actually start feeling it. Like, I would say over the last 2 years that I've been here, before it was like not as like San Francisco-ish. Like, I mean, like, San Francisco's culture is kind of extreme, but you can see the influence that the tech economy is like bringing to Seattle.
mm-hmm.
It's like, housing costs are just like going through the roof now. You can see, like, whenever I go into Uber, they're always talking about these tech workers.
Right.
Are you with Amazon? Are you with Microsoft?
Well, there's that Amazon Go store that just like opened up. Dude, that's like that's a huge thing for most people that really, like, you walk in the store and pick something up and walk right out and it's paid. That's future, man.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a very kind of like futuristic kind of thing. Like, you could feel the growth. Like, I would say you can feel the change very subtly as you like interact with people.
Hmm.
Now it's starting to feel like there's a lot of people in tech here. You're either in tech or you're not in tech. Because that was a very similar feeling to San Francisco.
Why Seattle, man? Of all places in the States, can you? I haven't done my research on this, but I know that there is a huge impact by Microsoft and Amazon. But why did they choose Seattle to be like a headquarter? Because there's so many other places. I don't know. Do you know? Can you elaborate on that?
I'm actually not sure why they chose. Like, I think back then, Microsoft was, part of the whole like .com boom, or not even before that, at Silicon, like in the 80s, right, when the computers were starting up, right? And so I'm not really sure why he chose Seattle, but I would say that that was one of the big influences of why other like tech companies came here.
Yeah.
Like, we're doing their effects now because you have a lot of these workers who work for Microsoft who are now very skilled engineers and product managers that are able to start other tech companies.
Right.
Right? And then your options are: do you actually want to go move down to San Francisco or New York?
Fair enough. What else did I have for you? Thoughts on some of these topics? I can kind of get into it, but I wanted to ask you: do you think coding is important for the average Joe to understand?
I think it's the job of the future. I think it's like the kind of the blue collar job of the future.
Okay, so it's a job. What about in everyday life? Do we need to know it as like just getting around and understanding how code works? Not as a profession, but as a personal, how much it will be part of our lives.
I would say it depends on what kind of life you want to live. Like, I wouldn't say it's necessary, but I think in the future, just everyone will know it. It's like, it's kind of like, how do you repair your car? Do you need to know how to repair your car?
Yeah, well, you it's a hobby. It could be a hobby.
But, it helps to really know how to repair.
Absolutely.
Right. And so like the same thing with code is like, it helps to know to like troubleshoot things.
Let's talk about your house, for example, because I've been seeing some updates. What are some things that what kind of tech have you been using for your house?
There's pretty much very low tech in my house right now.
Really? Oh, okay. Oh, I thought you were starting to get into.
I know, I'll get there. So my last apartment was like fully automated and all that kind of stuff, but I'm trying to keep this place more like natural.
Oh.
More like, just like,
Oh.
I'm trying to be more low tech, I would say.
Oh, that's interesting because you spend a lot of your like time being in tech, and you kind of want to.
No, it's kind of like dizzying how much tech stuff there is. Like, I wasn't looking for like things to like upgrade for the house, and there's just so many products that just don't make any sense.
Huh.
On top of that too, none of them talk to each other like in a proper way. So you have all these competing products with their own systems that don't really integrate with each other. So it takes a lot of work to just like get everything to work properly.
Wow, that's a good point. So it means that, it's going to be, as the average consumer, we're going to get more and more bombarded by these products that are made just for the sake of monetary gain, as opposed to like what you call seamless interaction.
Yeah. So right now I have Alexa, I have Alexa, I have like smart thermostat, I have like smart lighting. Yeah. The thing is, like, it's like I have all these apps that, they talk to each other, but they don't.
Right.
Yeah.
And then before you even we started this, you kind of showed me around the house. You're building a garden in your front yard. Is that your front yard there?
Yeah.
Backyard, front yard. That's something that is very human, I think. Like being able to get back into the ground and fertilizer and get fertilizer and plant stuff. And you said something about like 80% of what you're going to be eating in the future is going to be homegrown, correct?
Well, I want to try doing 100%.
Okay.
But this year I'm trying for 80%. Like after once my garden gets set up. So like part of it is to like, how do I be more sustainable?
Right.
And it's also for like health reasons because, like homegrown vegetables are actually way more nutritious than like store-bought vegetables.
Yeah.
It's an experiment in like, how do I become like less dependent on like services like stores and so on.
Yeah.
Right.
Difficult or not?
It's a lot of work. From what I've seen, it's when I've talked to people about like gardening and like starting gardens, like how like aggressive I want to do it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, right? So the thing is I'm thinking about is like, how do I automate as much of it?
Yeah. How much tech can you well, for that case, would you avoid using tech to build a garden like that, or would you use more tech to help it become more efficient?
So I guess my first year is do everything manually, so I can actually like I've never really started like a large scale garden.
Nice.
Or like you're growing a lot of vegetables. So the first one is like learning how to actually just do it. So I've read a bunch of books about like gardening and like feeding yourself or sustaining yourself on gardens. The next step is like preservation techniques. So if you have a lot of food, how do you make it last longer?
All right.
Right. And so like salting, pickling, dehydrating, all those sort of things. Um, and then that's what I'm trying to figure out this year. The next year is figure out like, what can I do to like extend it, right? Which involves like greenhouses, tech-wise, it's like, monitoring systems, automatic watering, notifications for like, this crop is ready, should be ready to harvest soon, or like you should plant these.
Hmm.
A lot of it has to do with like timing, right? So, knowing when to plant a crop and when to, harvest the crop, and like getting that timing right. Because like in one case, you might be like, oh, I need some lettuce, right? So I'm gonna plant 20 heads of lettuce, right? Then all of a sudden, like 6 weeks in, you have 20 heads of lettuce, and you're like, I don't need this much lettuce,
Oh, yeah.
right? So you need to stagger it, right? So like plant like 2 crops of lettuce like every 2 weeks,
Right.
right? So like things like that. That's the things I don't know yet, just because I've never gone through the process.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard, it's something you just have to do to learn. Because like I can tell you these things, but you don't realize until you actually do it.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah, it's fascinating because I think this is a common conversation that we're having about the future as well. Is how do we become more sustainable? I mean, there's still often arguments whether or not climate change is even real with some people, right? But for those of us who are believe in sustainability and being able to be self-sufficient, that is a really cool project. What you're doing, man. Something that I don't think about. Because, man, I'm from the city, man, and most people are very removed from where their food comes from. So what you're doing is a pretty cool thing, and I'm very interested in your process. And you should probably do a blog about it, man.
Yeah.
keep that in check. All right, some things that I wanted to talk to you about. So because you are in the, like as you say, in the middle of all the tech industry, heavy tech industry, what do you think about AI? What do you think about automation? So we talk about automation with your gardening and forms of production and all these things, cloud computing. Can you share some ideas? Share with me what you think about these ideas, because you must talk about it all the time. Or
So I think AI is pretty interesting. So like AI has been like one of the big hot topics recently in the past few years. Like the big thing is that it's enabling is that computing costs are now becoming cheaper. We have more access to tools. We have more data, right, to train these like AI models. And so I think that the thing with AI is that it is now making it possible to remove like humans from like current jobs. Right. So if you think about something like autonomous vehicles, right, we train autonomous vehicles using data, right, to use AI training models. Right. What impact that has is that if you don't need someone to drive a car, what happens to all the drivers in the world or in America, right? So you have first of all taxi drivers, long haul trucking drivers, all these sort of things, right? And so they all of a sudden get displaced, right? And so like what economic impact does that have? The second thing is like the idea of like singularities kind of things. So like if you actually did have intelligent AI, what would it try to optimize for? Would it try to optimize whatever thing that it's trained for? Would it try to optimize like humans out, for example? And so if you had an AI that said, let's go solve climate change, right? And so the AI might be like, oh, humans are a problem with climate change, so we need to get rid of humans. Funny. Might be one of those sort of things. See, automation. I think automation it's interesting because it's like it's hard to automate a lot of real life things. I would say, like think about my home, right? And so if I thought about like what a truly automated system would be like, it would make the home exactly how I want it, when I want it, without me doing anything. Which is hard for me to do because I'm always like, I'm here, I'm there, I'm in different moods, there's different people in the house, right? And so I don't think without me like hitting buttons or like commanding it to do things, I can't get that level of automation where I, want, right? It's really good for a competitive task, like for example, like, turn on the lights, turn off the lights, go do the garden and stuff, right? But I think like getting everything to like sync up together as a system is like an impossible task. What else?
Oh, back to AI. I want to interrupt you. Do you think that is the future of AI and technology in going down that way? Do you think you have a responsibility, or people have the responsibility of learning it and understanding it? Or are we can we just continue living the way we do without thinking so much about it, and that is just sort of conjecture.
Yeah. I kind of think we're past that tipping point of like getting everyone to learn it because it's such an advanced topic in technology. It's like if you were to take an average person who's like, you know, how would you learn about AI? Like, like the way, remember I think thought back to like, what are the fundamentals and so on, right? So like I could tell you all like the top level things, the benefits and the pros and cons of it. But then to truly learn about like, what impact AI has and how is it built and how to actually build AIs, it's like you learn all the previous topics of like, computer science and math and all that stuff. It's a very advanced skill to learn.
Mm-hmm. So then what you're saying is that we've kind of missed the ship on that. Most people have, unless you decide to get into it as a vocation almost, right?
Yeah, like, unless you spend a lot of time doing it because it is such an advanced skill set.
Fair enough. Okay.
Like, look at all the top AI researchers. They've been doing it for like 20 years now, right?
Right.
And the reason why they're so good is that they've spent their careers like just learning this.
So then how do people start becoming prepared for something like this? And then, okay, so now how are governments going to be able to even like control that? Because like, if you don't understand the technology, how can you simply make policies about it, something like that?
Well, the thing is, like, for most governments, it's reactionary, right? So once something actually comes out, then they see the effect of it, and then they're like, okay, we need to make a policy for it, right? And so, like, you can't really get ahead of the curve because you have all these companies that are controlling these massive AI resources and that, have downstream effects.
Wow. Yeah, sounds pretty crazy. Yeah. Okay. And you were saying about automation. Automation is a form of efficiency that, for your example, for your house. Like, I wish that a lot of things were automated, but I don't know. Do you think automation takes away from our own responsibilities as people? Like, when we start to automate things, we don't think about certain things that are innately human, and we let something else do it for us. Do you think that makes us, philosophically less human?
Well, it depends, right? So like the way I see it is like paving cow paths, right? So when something was like a lot of work before, right? You can put a piece of automation in there, be like, oh, it's no longer any work, right? So it actually frees up your time, right? So it depends what you're using your time for. So if your time is like very important to you, right? And you can do more things of higher leverage, then sure, right? But in some cases, some people don't have those sort of things, right? So automation is just like, I'm going to use my time to go play more video games. Which, if that's what they want to do, then sure. Right. So I think it depends on like a person and what they're trying to like accomplish.
Fair enough. Yeah. So the other topics were why I wanted to ask about cloud computing was I had another guest that talked a little bit about the qubit and the idea that, storage and making everything smaller and smaller and it being in the cloud. How much of that do you think is that a fascinating topic for you, cloud computing?
Well, yeah. Well, the big thing is that cloud computing has enabled like individuals to do things that took companies to do before. Like for example, if you wanted to make Google back then, right, it costed millions of dollars because you needed all these servers to go, right, all these sort of things, right. But now, if you wanted to actually create the equivalent Google of like back then today, one developer could do it. With resources of like cloud computing, all those sort of things, right? Which is massive like leverage for society. Thing that it now requires less people to do more things because all the infrastructure is now set in place. I think one of the negatives right now though is that a lot of the data and like infrastructure is siloed between companies, right? And so like you actually don't know what's going on with like your data. Right? With all these like massive corporations like like Facebook, Amazon, Apple, right? They're all siloed data stores that, like the recent Facebook thing that happened with like all the data breach, right? You just don't know what they have and who's getting the information, right? Like Amazon, for example, Amazon is one of the biggest cloud computing providers with Amazon Web Service, right? But they are also big like consumers company too, right? And so they actually have like a lot of information on you, right? I have an Alexa in my house, right? And it's like always listening to what I say. Like who knows what data they have and if they have data breach.
Yeah.
Right?
How do you wrap your head around that then, as someone who has an Alexa in your room and you know that that could be a possibility? Like, how do you sleep at night knowing that something is listening to you, and perhaps even like these ideas? Like, I don't know if it's a myth, but they say that like phones are listening to us, and I mean, if they truly are, it's not like we can even stop it. But how do you justify that?
I just think it's like the world we're gonna live in, right? So it's like if it's what needs to be done, then just make sure they don't have information that you don't want them to have.
Fair enough. Cool.
But I also think like what harm can it have? Like I'm not a very heavy Facebook user, right? So they're not really. Well, the thing I find creepy is that when I'll browse something on like Amazon or like the internet, I'll get an ad on it for Facebook that says, hey, you should buy this, which I think is really creepy because now they're like knowing what I want, right?
Right.
Which is like, and like the reason why they're knowing what I want is because they're trying to sell me something, right? In most cases, I want to buy the thing that they're trying to sell me.
Right. Do you think that it's creepy for you, but for some people, it would be like, I can't wait to get my hands on that technology?
Well, I think for me, it's knowing exactly, like knowing how all this stuff is built and how companies have this data and like who has access to this data. That's the kind of creepy part of like, for example, if I was at Facebook, if I, I'm pretty sure Facebook has policies stuff like that, or like Amazon, and say I'm like, say I worked at Amazon, and then I had the right access to the right information, and I want to be like, hey, I want to see Alan's browsing history on Amazon, right? As an employee there, I could find a way to export it, right? I'm pretty sure there's checks and balances in place, but then if you have the right people who like want the right information, they could get the information.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, like, as a consumer, I just don't know that's happening in the background, right? I don't know that, especially with Amazon, I don't know what they're doing to protect my data.
Okay, I'm gonna jump into this. The general media, like what I'm consuming from the media, tells me I'm under the impression that tech companies are at war with the current state, the current people in charge, the government. So, I mean, that's the narrative that I've been consuming and I've kind of understood. But now, let's say if there is an allegiance between the state and technology, and I feel like technology is the new religion because it used to be the church and the state that controlled the world. I don't know if I'm sounding a little bit too out of place here, but this idea is that if technology and the state combine forces, then how much like there's actually no more control. Like, what is free will? We don't even have that. Does that make sense?
No, I think the problem with like companies and tech companies in general is that it's all fueled by money, right? And so as a company, your number one goal as a company is to provide shareholder value, to increase your share price. When you put, to just generate as much profit as possible. Yeah. Right. And when you're doing so, you make decisions that are optimized for that sole purpose of like, how do I generate as much profit as possible? Right. Which doesn't exactly increase like social good in some cases. And I would say in cases like, if that's your sole optimization, you're not increasing social good, you're actually creating, net negative. Right? Because at that point now, like the company needs are fully met, and then it's just like everyone's trying to like, what can I do to optimize value for myself as a company? Right? And that requires like not following certain governmental laws or making decisions that were like not good, that would may impact like society.
And it makes me think about UBI, for example, this idea that there is such a huge gap because of the market economy, this idea that, all these companies are, like you said, optimized for profit. What do you think about UBI?
What's UBI?
Universal basic income. This idea that everyone should have a certain amount of money designated to them with no catches, no strings attached. Everyone should just have a certain amount of money given to them.
So I think it's a good thing, right? I think like if I think about like in society in general, right? I almost feel like where we're at technologically as humanity is that we should have a lot of these like problems solved, so we don't have them solved. Like for example, like hunger, right? There's no reason why anyone in this day and age should be hungry, right? And so, like, we have enough food, we have enough technology, we have enough resources that every single person can solve, like worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
That we should be able to solve world hunger if you just like focus on like, okay, we're gonna solve this problem, right? And so like that's the same sort of thing. It's like, why don't, if we think about accelerating gap of like rich and poor, then I think the poor people will eventually not be able to like, provide for themselves.
Right.
That's where universal basic income comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a good thing that, because as soon as you're not having your lower level needs met, you can't think about higher level activities.
Right.
If you're thinking about food, you're not going to think about your education.
Right.
If you're not thinking about like education, you're not going to think about like, how can I improve society or my village or my city, right? So those sort of things, right? And so I think like, I think it's a good thing. It's an experiment that, I think it's going to have to happen eventually, just because, the way I see it right now is like a lot of more people are, working like paycheck to paycheck, not being able to provide for themselves.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about, this idea of like helping, like, UBI is an idea that we can think that we're giving someone something, and it's like helping others. But I think it's not even that anymore. It's just the way that things are happening. It's not no one's giving anyone anything. It's just the way things are working, how things are. What's another thing? But also like, why some people will argue, why are other people's problems our own? Why should we care when we're here and somebody else over there is having an issue? Why is it all of a sudden subjected for us to do that, to help other people?
Well, it's like healthcare in Canada, right? In healthcare in Canada, it's like when I was in Canada, healthcare is just not something I think about, right? Like I get sick, I go see a doctor, right? If I have any sort of medical issues, I see a doctor, right? Whereas in the States, it's like, I'm going to solve my own problems. I actually pay for my own problems, right? But it's such a big issue here. Right? It's such a big issue here that, like when I got sick, I was like, well, how do I go see a doctor? I have to like go look at my insurance. I have to use my network. I have to do this stuff, right? Even then, it still costs money because I have a deductible. Right? And so it's like it's something that went from didn't have to think about it to now I have to like think about it. Right? And so in Canada, I was happy that service was there, right? Like just something that was like, I just didn't have to think about it. It provides mobility. But in the States, it's such a big thing, right? Because like, when you're thinking, well, what job you want to do? Well, if I want something I want a job that provides healthcare for myself and my family. Right? And if you think about that, then it's like, well, do you have job mobility then? Well, because you're thinking about, where can I actually go work? What risks do I take on by not having healthcare?
Right.
Or and it's expensive too. It's very expensive here otherwise.
Yeah.
So like that's just the difference between two economies, between like Canada and the U.S., right?
Yeah.
I would say in general, people in Canada are like happier. Like in general, it's like it feels like people in Canada are just like there's no good, but there's no bad, and there's no extremisms, I would say.
Yeah.
Right, but in the U.S., there's like way more extremes. Right, so if you think about the global scale, it's like the same sort of thing. Like what are people's needs, and like what are we trying to fulfill, and why aren't our needs met?
Thanks for bringing back the conversation to Canada. And it's funny because American influence is so high and so strong in Canada, though, like all of that. Like, even a couple months ago, this idea that Amazon might have been putting a headquarter in Canada, and they were trying to figure out where it was going to be, and everyone was it was all in the news, right? It's like heavy American influence. Yeah. But yet, Canada has such great things in place, like you said, universal healthcare, and not having most citizens like me don't really think about it because we know we take it for granted.
I just always had it, right?
Yeah. Well, okay. Actually, I was gonna talk to you about this idea of we have a mutual friend of ours who has a friend who works at Apple, and a couple months ago, before the iPhone 10 came out, they had gotten it ahead of time. So some people actually got the iPhone 10 beforehand, and they were taking a picture with it. and it was beautiful. And my friend and our mutual friend was like, "Oh, it's a great thing. It's amazing."
Yeah.
How important do you think it is for you to keep ahead of times with technology and keep ahead of the curve when technology is transforming so quickly?
Well, I sort of feel like a Luddite because I'm using an iPhone 6 still.
You're okay. All right.
I'm still using a really old phone, and um, I almost feel like it's I don't know, like before I used to be this like huge Apple fanboy where I always had to like have the latest one. I always upgraded, right? And now I'm just like every time I upgrade, I'm just like, it doesn't work any better than the last one. Like it's got more features and stuff like that. But yeah, I just feel like I'm at the point where I just don't care about technology anymore.
Oh,
It's kind of funny because what's technology? I know how to build all the things, but
yeah.
it's like, like what does it actually help me do in my life?
Right.
That's why I get back to like, does having a better, faster phone actually let me do more?
Huh.
Right. And so, yeah, like I recently just bought, or like last year, I got the new MacBook, the latest MacBook. And before that, I had a MacBook that I was using for like 6 years.
Yeah.
Right. And I actually don't enjoy the new one better, right? It's just like it lets me do my job. It works. It's got some cool features, right? It's actually funny. I destroyed the last one because I just accidentally spilled a bottle of Soylent on it. That's how I broke it.
Funny though, junior high students are all obsessed with the latest technology and what's coming out and what's the new breaking edge technology that they can get their hands on. So I feel like that state of mind that you just talked about is something that is obtained further down like a certain mentality that you get into a state of mind to think that, look, I only want things that will benefit. Like, how is it going to help me, as opposed to thinking about how cutting edge something is for the sake of cutting edge.
Yeah, well, it's like the thing is, we live in a consumer society. We always want the latest, better, faster thing, right?
Yeah.
But if you ask yourself, why do we want it? Is it society telling you want it, or do you want it? Or something that like we're just there's so much consumerism going on right now because all the companies will say, you get the latest best thing, and your friends are like, oh, you need this, thing to be, better.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd rather exchange things for experiences, just like when I was hanging out with you, because you're one of the coolest guys that I know.
I mean, so one of the big things when I lived in Asia, I literally had a backpack, my laptop, and 2 pairs of clothes in my home. Right, I spent 2 years with just those items.
Right.
Right, and like living those years, you just realize you just don't need a lot of things.
Well, you can't do that in Canada or in U.S. You can't decide that, look, I'm going to take off today and I'm just going to have that certain. Can you? Can you possibly do that?
Yeah, you can do that.
Huh.
Like if you really actually want to live an alternative lifestyle, right? You could do it. Like who's saying you can't do it?
Wow.
Like, have you actually tried?
The social what is it? Stigma to something like that is so strong in the West. Would you?
Yeah, but it's like, who are you trying to impress, or who are you trying to be unstigmatized by? If those are the type of people who will judge you based on that, then why are you associating yourself with them?
That's very good.
It all comes back to your own state of mind. Are you okay with your living conditions, or are you okay with whatever you want?
Yeah. Very good point, man. All right, so we're gonna wrap this up with.
All right.
Do you still run?
Yeah, I'm running. I'm actually training for a marathon.
Okay. Let's talk about how long a marathon is.
42 kilometers. Anyone?
How do you train for a marathon, dude?
Okay, so so this I'm thinking of differently, because the decision to actually start training for this marathon was done about 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, and the marathon is next month.
Okay, that's not a lot of time.
What?
That's not a lot of time.
Not a lot of time. Right? I haven't been running. I've been running, but I haven't been running regularly, marathon level training regularly.
Okay.
So I'm trying to apply more biohacking techniques to this one.
Explain.
Right. Okay. So generally, you need your body to adapt to running a marathon, right? Otherwise, it's just gonna be painful. You can injure yourself and so on. Right. So what I've done, so normally training cycles for marathon says, run so many miles, like take 3 months. Right? Most training methods say take 3 months to train for marathon. Start off at like, a good base and then start like building up to like a certain base and then taper off and then, go run a marathon, right?
Okay.
That's a standard training mechanism, I would say.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to
But
do
Richard's not about standard.
so what I'm trying to do this time is since I haven't been training, I'm trying to like, optimize my training.
Okay.
So like the way it works is that I see it as there's three main components to your body and exercise, right? One is exercise, recovery, and nutrition, right? And so the exercise component is like, just the standard thing is like in order to run a marathon, you need to be able to run for the distance, right? And so running distance is like, 40 kilometers. So generally you have to run about, 80% of that at least to get to that point. And then you need your body to adapt to those like physical changes so that you can. So your muscle needs to adapt, your heart needs to adapt, and your energy system needs to adapt, right? So that to deliver energy to do so comfortably. So that's that. The second thing is recovery, right? So like after you do an exercise, your body repairs your body. You do damage to your body, right? Which then repairs itself so that you can do, and adapts itself so that it's more optimized for that activity, right? And the third thing is nutrition, which is like what are you eating to like fuel your body and facilitate recovery, right? So I'm trying to optimize those sort of three things, right? And so the way I see it is that everything is in the cycle, right? So if you think about like cycles, right? A typical marathon training program it's in 1 week cycles, right? So it says, Monday, like 3 days a week, run the schedule, on the weekend do a long run, right? And so what I'm trying to do is for one, I'm trying to reduce those cycles, right? So instead of doing like a 7-day cycle, I'm trying to do a 5-day cycle, right? That involves like, the short runs, medium runs, and the long runs.
Are you measuring your stats or something? Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
Yeah, so I'm measuring everything.
Okay.
Yeah, because you got to measure everything. Otherwise, you just don't know, right?
Okay.
So there's that. Second thing is recovery, right? So like, how do you recover faster, right? So the typical thing is like sleep, massages, like foam rolling, myofascial release, and like Epsom salt baths, right? So I'm doing all those things just like all the time, just to like facilitate my recovery faster, and so that I can go do another cycle again more. And the third thing is nutrition, right? So I've switched my diet to a raw vegan diet, not fully, but like primarily, right? Just so I have like way more nutritious food rather than like, typical diet is like, you have like your carbs and so on. I'm a vegetarian, like in general, but typically you would eat a lot of like carbs for energy, right? So I'm just eating a massive amount of like vegetables, just like uncooked or dehydrated raw smoothies, just so I can get the nutrients and calories I need. But just like massive amounts of like nutrients and calories.
Do you notice it? I have some feedback here, but do you have some? Does it feel difference?
Not sure yet. I ran 20 kilometers yesterday and it felt okay. Right. So like right now, I feel like I could probably run 30 kilometers, like kind of painfully. But I need to just like run more, right?
Well, 20K is almost there.
What?
You're almost there with 20K. Halfway.
Yeah, that's not almost there. That's not even halfway.
All right.
Yeah, right. So I need to like in 2 weeks run like 35K.
Jesus.
Yeah. So
let me know if your system works, man. Because I really want to run a marathon myself, and I can't wait to hear from your success and how well you can do.
Well, you should just run. Like, do you run it all right now?
Yeah, I do the 5K run, but I don't train for like I don't like the idea of running and then losing all the weight. So that's why I don't do marathons. I like to do marathons when I'm less worried about, but I think of down the road I'll do marathons, but more right now I'm running for keeping in shape as opposed to endurance.
Well, you don't think about losing weight though, right? As long as you eat enough food, you won't lose weight.
I guess you're right.
Yeah, it's like.
But the prep is a lot of work, Richard. It's not easy, dude. Like eating in general, like let's not even try to prepare for training. Eating in general is hard work. Making food in the morning, your lunch and your dinner is a lot of work. So what you're about to do is not easy.
Yeah, well, nothing's easy if you want to do it.
Yeah. So that's why it'd be cool if you kind of put all that information up, and tracked it. I mean, there's a lot of people who do that, but it'd be cool to hear it from you.
I would say the biggest thing is just it's really expensive, just eating a lot of like vegetables.
Really?
Like my garden's not fully established yet, so I'm just like eating a massive amount of like veggies right now.
Oh, why is it so expensive? You're telling me vegetables are more expensive than flesh, meat?
Well, no, because I don't eat meat, right?
Right.
Before I used to use like grains for my calories,
Okay.
right? So I'm trying to eliminate the grain part of things, so just eat a lot of like way more dense calorie things, right?
Right. You're inspiring me right now. I'm gonna go and make some vegetables after this, and then see if I get some energy changes.
But it takes like at least 2 weeks for your body to adapt, right?
Oh, it's not just right away.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna eat veggies and be healthy.
And then run a marathon, yeah. Well, Richard, man, thanks for doing this, dude. It's been great. You covered a lot, and like I said, I usually rewatch the episode, and then I try and write about some of the things that my guests talked about. And you talked about a lot of things, so thanks for letting me put you on the spot that way.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, appreciate it.
All right, man.
All right, cheers. Have a good Sunday. Good luck.
Bye.
Thanks for joining me on the show, guys. That was Richard Chan, and he's a developer and CTO of the company Poppy, based in Seattle. He's a Canadian. We talked a little bit about a lot of different things. So I will be writing a post after I rewatch the episode. Thanks for joining me. Enjoy your Sunday. Peace.